Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kim. I am a senior QA engineer, unemployed senior QA engineer, because I just experienced the fourth company to do layoffs since 2020. And I wanted to do a series about just layoff talk in general, specifically in the tech industry, having seen this happen so many times. And it's specifically for folks who just had, like, the layoff is real fresh, like the past few weeks, or it's coming, and you've been put on notice that it's coming, and just give you some support and some guidance and some tips and just some honest, like, listen, let's talk about it for a second. I don't have a script or anything. I have bullet points, but I have written absolutely no script, and we're just gonna go off the hip with this because it's something that you kind of go off the hip with, I think, and the script is not necessary. So word of advice, words of wisdom, just general things I would encourage you to not do. Do not publicly badmouth the company that just laid you off on social media or like at a job fair or like anything like that. I would not recommend that. I think that will really put a damper on your potential prospects for future employment. I know it can be really, really hard not to just go off and just speak your mind, especially if you gave a lot of your life and years to a company, but companies definitely look you up on social media, on LinkedIn, on whatever. Sometimes people wind up on other people's videos, the news, and I don't think that is something you want to follow you around, because other companies might look at that as, oh, well, they are a bad reflection, or they could be a bad reflection on us because of how they carry and conduct themselves on the internet. So I know it's hard, but just don't do it. Like, vent all you want in person to like people you personally know that aren't gonna put you on blast, but stay off of TikTok. Don't put it on TikTok, and definitely don't put it on LinkedIn. And I'm not saying you got to go the opposite route, which is like, say, oh my God, I got laid off today. Today was my last day, and I want to thank them so much for the opportunity. It was a really great time. Like, you don't have to do that either. You really don't have to say anything. Definitely don't publicly badmouth him. I think it is really important to understand that most of the time when you're laid off, it is not your direct manager's fault, and to not hold it against them. Most of the time, it is like your manager's manager or your manager's manager's manager. It is a decision that comes from shareholders or C-suite or someone else that you probably never have interacted with that is making the decision to lay people off en masse, especially if we're talking about, 20, 30, 40% reduction in workforce. I will also, it's really hard not to take it personal and to say my manager specifically chose me and I'm not good enough to stay here. But it is a really tough decision, especially if you have a good manager, right? To have to make that decision and to hold it against them, I don't think is fair, because again, it's coming from people who have like 2 commas in their yearly salary. It's people who have private jets. It's people who are investors that are saying, we need to see a return in our investment. We need to see more profits. We need to see whatever. And the fastest way to do that is to reduce headcount. So oftentimes, and I have friends who are managers or directors who've had to lay people off, and I've gotten their perspective on this, and they've talked about this at length, and it's a hard decision for them to have to be told, you need to cut half the people from your team. And they got to sit there and figure out who they keep and who is going to go. And they realize they're disrupting lives when they do that. So just keep that in mind and give them a little bit of grace that, like, most of the time, it's not your manager's decision to lay you off. It's strictly a money thing. And again, I said most of the time. I mean, I don't know if you're like, a small business or something, but like in tech, you talking about like, there's a comma in the number of employees at the company. Next is, this one is debatable. And it goes into the one that I mentioned about not bad mouthing the company. And that is maintaining being cordial with your managers and your peers. Now, this one is really, really important, especially after a layoff. And I say this because after a layoff or 2 at a company or 3, and especially if you're working like greenfield and like startups, a lot of the times your manager goes on to another company as a higher up. So they become directors, they become CTOs. Sometimes they become CEOs. And if you maintain a good relationship with them after a layoff, a lot of times when they're getting ready to build their team, they go back to the people they worked with previously. And they go and they reach out and they say, hey, I have this team and this opportunity, and I would love for you to come join me. This has happened multiple times to me in the past where I've been laid off and my managers that I've worked with previously personally reached out on the phone to offer me a job. If you maintain good relationships while you're working with your managers or your peers, and especially after a layoff, because they remember how you acted on your way out, right? That can open doors for you later on. Or they can be referrals at other companies, or they might know someone at another company that's hiring. Don't curse out your manager on your way out. Don't curse out your coworkers either, because sometimes your coworkers go on at other companies and they either become like tech leads, or they, work with recruiters to help fill their positions on their teams. And those can also help work in your favor as well. People will help you out, especially if you're close with your teammates and you really like some teammates, they'll definitely hopefully look out for you after a layoff. So don't burn do not burn bridges on your way out. I mean, seriously, there's so many people that have burned bridges at previous jobs, and later on when they go apply at other jobs, they don't realize that the bridges that they burned burns bridges for future opportunities. Because here's the thing, the tech industry is big, but it's not that big. Your reputation follows you for sure, and maintaining a good reputation, especially on your way out, and maintaining dignity, maintaining just good relationships and being cordial can really do favors for you in the long run. Okay, so before I go into this next one, I think it is good to distinguish that there are two different kinds of layoffs. There's the layoff that is you are told you're being laid off, but you have a future date in which it's going to be your last day. So it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 months, but you were not laid off the moment you told you're laid off. The other type, which is the more heartless one, is you're laid off effective immediately or end of day, and your computer starts logging you out and you lose access to everything immediately. If you are one of those people who are lucky enough, and I say lucky enough to I don't really mean lucky enough. No one's lucky enough to be laid off, not unless you want to be laid off. But if you're one of the people who you have noticed that you're being laid off and you have time before your last day, use that time to get your stuff in order. So save any documents you need to save that obviously don't violate NDAs or violate agreements or anything like that. It's confidentiality, because let me tell you something, those companies will come after you and sue you if you take information that's theirs. So don't go copying code bases and all that. But if you have some grand proposal you were working on for professional development, save that. If you use your email address, your work email for personal things or doctor logins or something, make sure you update all of that information, and make sure that you gather all your contacts that you want to keep in contact with, anyone you'd like to use as a recommendation or a reference, and just getting that stuff in order before your last day. So, you at least have that stuff prepared. And also start documenting what your job responsibilities were and updating your LinkedIn and your resume. Next thing to think about is take a couple weeks off. Don't immediately jump into the job market. If you have not had to look at the job market the past 2 years, it's the most difficult job market I've ever seen it. It is Mad Max out there, y'all. And I don't mean that to scare anyone, but I think people really need to be realistic about the job market. There's so many speculations as to why it's tough. Obviously, there's a lot of people on the market, but it is hard to even get your resume looked at. And that was not a thing years ago. Now it's it's really hard to figure out the trick to getting your resume looked at by a human. And with that, the job search can be really, really draining and demoralizing. It can feel like a full-time job looking for a full-time job. So with that being said, take a couple weeks off. Sleep in, watch The Price is Right, go to the coast, do the things that you've been wanting to do during the day, pick up a new hobby, play whatever, but give yourself a couple weeks to take a break. because you will need that energy. And honestly, it just feels good. Like I'm taking a couple weeks off right now, recording videos, drinking coffee, playing Day of the Diver. Like it's good. Sort of. It's the calm before the storm. It's going to be an absolute madness, but I'm going to enjoy this little break. And I also recognize that not everyone is in a position to take time off. They have to look immediately. But if you can afford yourself to spare a couple weeks to just decompress and just absorb everything and just not think about work, I strongly encourage you to do that. In the part 0 that I'm going to cover, I will talk about how to prepare for a layoff. That will allow you to take a couple weeks off. So, yeah. And then last thing, which is probably the most important thing, cry, vent, not on social media. We're not going to do that. Talk to somebody, do whatever you got to do to get your emotions out and to accept what has happened, but don't stay there too long. You can go to a really, really dark place if you stay in that feeling of misery, if you stay in that feeling of self-doubt, if you stay thinking you're not good enough, if you stay thinking like, why me? You can get to a point where you've dug yourself in a hole so deep, like mentally, that you can't climb out of it. It's okay to be sad, especially if you were working somewhere and you gave a lot of your life and sacrificed a lot. And you're under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress because you're a provider, or, you've got responsibilities and bills and whatever. And it's okay to be there and to have those feelings, but you cannot stay there because it will eat you alive and it'll be really hard to get out of it. So like if you need to go get mental health counseling and talk to someone, there's free resources for that. If you need to take a break off of social media for a couple days and just decompress, if you need to be reminded that you are good enough to do the thing that this company told you you weren't good enough to do anymore, or if you need to be reminded that you are more than just the company you work for and just work, I'm here to remind you that you are. And I don't want you to sit in this space, especially in this headspace where you constantly doubt yourself, you're burnt out, you feel like you're not good enough, and that everything is just so hard and impossible. Sometimes we get dealt setbacks, and sometimes bad things happen to teach us a lesson. And sometimes the lesson is us learning how to pivot. Sometimes the lesson is us learning how to grow and become stronger. And sometimes the lesson is this door has to close for another door to open. And you're not going to be able to learn the lesson, and you're not going to be able to understand any of those lessons or to reach the end of either of those lessons unless you allow yourself to. And staying in a super dark place and doubting yourself and feeling sorry for yourself and beating yourself up, it's going to block you from being able to do that. So it was a very long-winded answer, but all I'm saying is, like, it's okay to be sad, but you be sad for a couple weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but like, don't sit there. Pick yourself up. You will find another job. You might find a different job. You might pivot and do something completely different, but you will come out on the other side. You have to believe that you'll come out on the other side. You have to allow yourself to. So yeah, I don't like giving like philosophical like responses and answers like that, but honestly, I also stay off LinkedIn. Limit your time on LinkedIn. Honestly, that's the biggest one. Put a timer. If you're going to get on LinkedIn, put a timer, limit it, because that is going to suck your soul out and drain you. So if you recently got laid off, take a couple weeks off, play some video games, go do some gardening, go have a midday beer or something, like whatever you got to do, and then get back at the job search when the time feels right for you. And don't badmouth your company. And reach out if you need help, because people are here to support you. There are a lot of people going through the exact same thing right now. I said I'm going through this again, y'all. This is not my first time getting laid off. But here I am, trying to be chipper. I think a lot of people also, like, when I was getting laid off, they were really surprised at my disposition. Honestly, though, like, after seeing this happen, going through this multiple times, just like, it is what it is. What are you gonna do? This is also gonna lead into another topic I want to talk about, which is the, like, unintended consequence of the mass tech layoffs and multiple layoffs on one person. Which maybe I'll record after this one. I don't know. That might also be a live stream. Speaking of live streams, I want to do more live streams around, like, layoff stuff and QA stuff. So if you want to see more of those, leave me a comment. And I'll try to get some scheduled because I ain't got nothing but time. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. This is what happens when I don't script a video. It just flies out of here. I appreciate you so much for watching. If you are someone who is recently affected by layoffs, solidarity. I'm sorry to hear that, but you're not alone, and we're gonna get through it together. And I will try and help as best I can with this whatever attitude that I have. If you want to check out any more videos about tech stuff, QA stuff, content creation stuff, you should check out this video right here. This one. But don't look at the backyard, because this is home edition stuff. And someday when this is done, I'll have an office. And hopefully I have a job before I have an office again. Okay, bye.